Oh, good evening, Ray. Good evening, not afternoon. I confused the computer shift now, right? So this is evening shift, not afternoon shift. Yeah, good evening. Yeah, good evening. Good evening. Right. Okay, so welcome back to our class, right? After a short break, kind of short Khmer New Year break holiday, right? And now it's a lockdown time, right? So it's quite tough for us, right, to remain indoor all the time. Is 3.1, yeah. So let me talk about our schedule a little bit before we start our class, right? Today is 19 April, and so we have class. And next week, 26, we are not going to have class, right? So that would be another public holidays. We start Bochia, right? And so we will have we will not have class next week, and so we will meet again on the 3rd of May, right? The 3rd of May, and so you have 2 weeks to work on this chapter, right? So today we will be working. Well, from today until the 3rd of May, we will be working on Marxism and neo-Marxism, right? And so here, this is the schedule, right? So next week, no class. And the week after next week, the 3rd of May, we will move on to the next chapter, chapter 4 or part 4 of our course. But from today until the next 2 weeks, we are working on Marxism and neo-Marxism. Okay, and thus you may raise a question, or you may raise any problem with your reading and so on along the way, even if you cannot raise all the question on this classroom. You can do so in other platform, in other channels, right? Like Facebook groups, or even email, uh, or Google Classroom and so on, right? And for your major assignment projects, right, I will assign, and I will upload the guideline for you this week. So previously I told you that I will upload the guideline and assign the compilation project before my new year, but I changed my mind, right? I decided to do it after my new year, so you have time to enjoy with your family and so on, right? And now it's time to it's kind of lockdown time, right? And so we all are expected to stay in, right? And so it's that we will have more time, right? With our family members, and also you will have more time for your reading as well. So I hope you have finished the reading, or at least if not all the reading, maybe at least some reading as well, right? So in this chapter, as you see, I gave you 3 reading, right? I uploaded 3 readings on your Facebook group. The first reading is the first textbook, right? And chapter 8 in that book, talking about Marxism. And the second reading is another textbook, and chapter 5 in that book, right? That talk about Marxism, written by Andrew Linklater. So we will focus more on Andrew Linklater's writing, because he also published another book, right? Another separate book talking about critical IR theory as well. So I will also focus on Andrew Linklater's ideas, right? And as you can see in my lecture notes, I put Andrew Linklater there for Marxism and neo-Marxism. The third reading is a journal article, right? Selected from a SAIC publication. And so that also a good article on neo-Gramscian perspective on world politics. And thus all the three reading are essential. And I think I would recommend you to read all the three reading here, right? Actually, I had prepared 6 readings for this part of this chapter, but I decided to upload only 3, right? And if you need more reading, you may email me, and I will send more reading to you, right? For more extra idea on Marxism and neo-Marxism. You might wonder why we are working on Marxism and neo-Marxism again, because last semester we also talk about Marxism when we read the chapter on socialism, right? It's a political ideology, socialism, and so we also read about Marxism, and now Marxism again. So here the reason is the Marxism that we are going to work on here, to read here, is about Marxism contribution to critical IR theory, right? And so here we will look at we will treat Marxism in terms of critical IR theory. We will look at how Marxism has something to do with world politics, with internationalization and internationalism of economic factors, right? Economic relation of production, right? And so on. And so this has something to do with Marxism as well, and how the neo-Marxist group, neo-Marxism, how the neo-Marxist group try to revise traditional Marxism in order to capture, right, to extend its explanatory power to capture world politics and international relations after the Cold War, right, especially after the Cold War, and to prove that Marxism remained relevant in its explanation of world politics and international political economy in our modern time, especially in our time after the Cold War came to an end. And so here the neo-Marxist group tried to put down the ideas, right, promoted by the group of scholars who think that the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union and communism in general marked the end of Marxism, marked the death of Marxism. But Marxism is not dead, right? Even Karl Marx passed away in 1883. Marxism remained with us, right? Even after the Cold War until now, and remained relevant in explaining world politics and international relations. And so we will see these lines of argument, how they prove it, right? And how they prove it, and what in Marxist writing that remain relevant in our current world's politics and international relations. And so we are working on here. And so we will be reading Marxism as a critical IR theory that has something to do with the evolution of world politics and international relations this semester. Okay, and that is why we have Marxism and neo-Marxism again. It's one of the critical theory in international relations. Okay, and so this is what we are doing now, right? For this part 3 or chapter 3 of our textbook, right? Of our textbook. Okay, and so let me check your name a little bit before we start our class discussions, right? So in case I forget this, right? So say not, right? Say not here, right?
Yes, I'm here.
And then Rất Thị Riêng, right? Rất Thị Riêng, not there, right? Rất Thị Riêng, then Tê Bụt Đom, right? Tê Bụt Đom here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mùi Vuột, right here. Then Siện Năng.
Yes, like.
Then Chai Long.
Yes, sir.
Then Sopanya, right?
Yes, like.
Then Sovisa, right?
Yes, like.
Darlene right here.
Yes, like.
Then Dane right here.
Yes, like.
Then Ponrod right. Ponrod.
Yes, teacher.
Yeah. Then Kimboromai right here. Yeah.
Yes, like.
Chita here. Then
Yes.
Pichita right here.
Yes, sir.
Manirod right here. Yeah. Then Dahlia right here.
Yes, like.
Yeah. Then Prasati right. Prasati here. Then
Yes, teacher.
Srai Pach right. Srai Pach here.
Yes, teacher.
Yeah, then Mei Hoi, right? Mei Hoi
Yes,
also
teacher. Yeah, yeah.
here. Then Vị Ball, right? Vị Ball here. Then
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
yeah, okay, Vulnerable Vị Ball, right? Yeah, here. And then Puttirit
Yes, sir.
here. Yeah, then what you mean here? Which you mean not there, right? Maybe late, absent or late. Right, what you mean? And then Konita here.
Here.
Yeah. Then Quang here. Then
Yes.
Rennie here.
Yes, teacher.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then we have Sun Hu, right?
Yes, teacher.
Yeah, Sun Hu here. Then Vị Miên here, right?
Yes, teacher.
Then Sộ Mật Tây, right? Sộ Mật Tây here.
Yes, teacher.
Yeah, then Rang Say, yeah, Rang Say here.
Yes, sir.
Thida, right? Thida.
Yes, like.
Then Virat Bon here.
Yes,
Then
teacher.
Danit, right? Danit here. Then Supetna, right? Supetna also. Supetna.
Yes, like.
Yeah. Then Sitkun here.
Yes, sir.
Then Keriya here.
Yes, sir.
Satsyanit also here.
Yes.
Yeah. Then Senasa also here. Yeah. Then Davin, right? Davin, last one also here. Okay. So anyone didn't hear your name?
Me, teacher.
Yeah. So who?
Some night, teacher.
Sầm Nang, right? Sầm Nang. Yeah, Sầm Nang here. Okay. Yeah, Sầm Nang. Where is Sầm?
Lecturer, teacher Daniel is here.
Yeah. Okay, I get it. Yes. Daniel, right? Daniel here. And Sầm Nang. Where is Sầm Nang? Oh, here. Yeah. Sầm Nang. Okay. Yep. All right. Okay. So that's it, right? So only two, only Ratiriya and what you mean, right? Maybe late or maybe problem with the network or something. Right? Okay, so as you see in on the Google Classroom, I uploaded two lecture notes. Right, so one lecture note is Marxism and neo-Marxism, mainly the ideas from Andrew Linklater in his article, his chapter, and his book as well. And another lecture note is a comparison between George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. His full name is long, right? George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. Let's call him Hegel, and Karl Marx. Right. So Hegel was a predecessor of Marx, and Karl Marx was greatly influenced by Hegel, and both of them were greatly influenced by Immanuel Kant. Right. You can see Kantian philosophy influenced a later thinker in Germany. They are all German, right? They are all Jew and German. Germany has been called the land of thinker, right? Germany, the land of thinker and poets, right? Because a lot of thinker and poets are from Germany, right? And that is why. And I think one of the reason why Germany has so many thinker, philosopher, and poet is because of their language, their German language, right? The German is a very complicated and sophisticated language to me, right? A lot of flexibility and analyticity in the language, and that is why, because of the language, the mind has a great work on that. Okay, so as a summary of the lecture note, you see the first lecture note, Marxism and neo-Marxism. by unruling letters, right? In that chapter lecture note, we look at first point, important point is different perspective and perception on Marxism, right? We look at, for example, a realist perspective of Marxism, right? And we look at the English school perspective of Marxism, like general perspective on that, what they think of Marxism. And after that, we go to the new interpretation from the 1980s, especially the late 1980s until the end of the Cold War in 1991, right? And so there have been new interpretation for Marxism. And this is how the neo-Marxist group, as well as the neo-Gramscian group, try to revive traditional Marxism in order to extend its explanatory power to capture world politics and international relations after the Cold War, and to prove that Marxism remained relevant in explaining world politics and international relations, and to prove that the end of the Cold War and the collapse of communism in general is not the end of, or it marked the end of, or the death of Marxism. Marxism is never dead. Marxism remained with us until now. And this is how they do it, right? So the second part, we look at the new interpretation that prove this kind of idea from the 1980s. Okay, and so this is the second part. And then after this general argument about the death and the relevance of Marxism in our time, and it relevant, continuing relevant of world politics and international relation, we go deep down to the core elements and argument in Marx writing. And here the third part, we look at class, production, and IR, international relation, in Marx writing. And so here, this is where the idea reflected, right? Marxism is not all about class relation and relation of production, right? Like the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Marxism is not only about that. Marxism also has something to do with international relation and world politics as well, right? And so here, this is the part that reflects how Marx's writing, right? How Marx writing has something to do with this kind of universal history and world politics and so on. And here the point that I put there: internationalization and internationalisms in Marx writing. That is where we can, where the author try to prove that Marx writing and Marxism itself is has something to do with world politics, right, and international relation. And here he argued that universal history emerged when social relation of production and exchange become global. And so here, Marx envisioned that the movement towards socialism will happen at a global scale, not just in one single society. And so he argued that socialism in one single society is nonsense, right? It's nonsense. It's not secure and it's not safe to have socialism in just one single society. Socialism should be spread around the world, right? That communism should be the end goal, right? And at the end, we should achieve a world of socialism, right, or communism. And thus, Marx predicted that the proletariat or the working class in one socialist society will join hands with another country or society to stake the revolution at global scale in order to abolish the capitalist government and make the transition towards socialism at the end. And thus socialism is a global phenomenon, right? And so because of this idea, this is what they mean by internationalism or internationalization of socialism. And because of this idea, after the Bolshevik victory in Russia, Lenin had the idea of establishing a kind of communist school called Lenin School in order to train communist agents around the world in order to spread communist ideology, to stake the revolution and monitor the revolution in order to abolish both capitalist and colonial government and make the transition towards socialism at the end. Right? So their vision is global, not just national. Their vision is global. And thus, because of this idea, right, we see that Marxism has something to do with this kind of international relation and world politics. And that is where you can say that, and Andrew Linklater makes a point about this, that Marxism really contribute to the study of international relation and world politics in this way. Okay, and so now you see the something new in this semester. Last semester we only deal with Marxism and socialism in general as a political ideology, right? And so low politics. But now we elevate Marxism to high politics, and thus we treat Marxism in terms of a kind of critical IR theory that has something to do with international relation and world politics, right? And then we go to the next part, Marxist analysis as a foundation of critical IR theory. And here we look at how Marxism and Marxist analysis become the foundation of critical IR theory. And you still remember when we talk about the trajectory, the four core strands of critical IR theory, Marxism is one of that contribute to the critical IR theory through what? Through the Frankfurt School critical IR theory, the Frankfurt School. You still remember. And then we go to the next part. We talk about nationalism and imperialism, right? Marxist ideas about nationalism and imperialism. We look at, for example, theory of capitalist imperialism. We look at the argument and idea from Lenin and Bukharin, and we try to compare Leninism against Marxism, right? And the themes in their writing, for example, and we look at the concept of third world Marxism, for example, and the proletarian internationalism that I just mentioned. Proletarian internationalism is the idea that the working class in one society will have to join hands and cooperate with the working class in another society in order to stake the revolution together at the same time to abolish the capitalist government or colonial government in order to make the collective transition toward socialism, right? And that is called proletarian internationalism, right? And so here Lenin and many other Marxists believe that the national fragmentation was an inevitable consequence of global spread of capitalism. And so they all criticize that capitalism is a dangerous system to follow, right? And the ideology and capitalism is capitalism causes a lot of problem in the world, right? The gap between the rich country and the poor, right? And the declines of human civilization and moralities and so on, right? So Karl Marx described capitalism as a boom and slum system, right? So they believe that it was essential to avoid this kind of socialist compromise with nationalism, and thus they would push forward this kind of proletarian internationalism, right? And so we look at the some of the theory developed, right, by the neo-Marxist group. For example, the post World War II theory of development and underdevelopment developed by the neo-Marxist group like For example, dependency theory, world system theory, and modernization theory. Right? For example, that you will study in the subject IPE in year 4. And when you go to year 4, you will study IPE as a subject, and international political economy, and you will be reading all about this theory, right? So here, this is how the Marxists and neo-Marxists have their perspective about that kind of nationalism and imperialism in here, right? And so the next part is the changing fortune of Marxism in IR. And so here we look at the Marxist approach to IR, right? Right. And so we all read about Marxism as a kind of economic reductionism. And so when it comes to the analysis of world politics and IR, it remained the same. Everything can be reduced down to economic factor to explain world politics. Right. So there have been a broad consensus in IR that Marxism has little, if anything, to offer the serious analyst. So here really says that Marxism only interaction between human and nature, not among humans, right? And so they criticize Marxism and so on. But from the 1980s on, the neo-Marxist group tried to counter this argument, right? And try to revise Marxist framework, as I just mentioned here. And so here, the next part, we look at the last part of this chapter. We look at Marxism and IR theory today, the contribution of Marxism in IR, right? And its attachment to the paradigm of production made Marxists vulnerable to the charge of neglecting some other idea like racism, ethnic, religious, and gender inequality, nationalism, and so on, right? And after that, we go to the conclusion part. The author make the point about Marxism contribution to IR in 4 themes, right? So I list down the 4 themes there, and you can see in the conclusion part. And so this is the first lecture note that gives you the summary of the reading from Andrew Linklater's articles in books, right? And I just try to summarize the point, the main point here, right? And you may go through my lecture note at the first lecture note. The second lecture note, I try to give a comparative study between George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel and Karl Marx, right? In terms of their philosophy of history, how they define human history, in terms of the notion of dialectic, right? So Hegel's notion of dialectic is called dialectical ideationalism, and Marx's notion of dialectic is called dialectical materialism. And so both of them present 2 different notions of dialectic. The notion of dialectic is a kind of influence from ancient notion of dialectic here. And so the third part, I include some ancient notion of dialectic from Plato, right? And Aristotle in ancient Greek philosophy. Plato's use the word dialectic, right? Or that means dialogue or debate or dialectical method, right? And so dialectical method here is usually about the discourse between 2 or more people holding different point of view. And the dialogue or the conversation will give us or provide us with some more understanding, deeper understanding of particular ideas or concept. And so in Plato's writing, for example, the Republic written by Plato, you will be reading the conversation between 2 or more people, right? 2 different or more people in the dialogue. For example, the dialogue between Socrates, his teacher, and Eusebio, the dialogue between Socrates and his friend Crito, when Crito came to Socrates to convince Socrates to escape from the trial that led to the death of Socrates. But Socrates refused to escape, for example. All of this story is written in dialogue using dialectical method. It is a kind of conversation between two or more people, and the conversation allow you to understand particular concept, to gain deeper understanding of the concept and the ideas and so on. So this ancient notion of dialectic has been used by Kant as well, right? And so Kant used the ancient Greek dialectic to signify the logic of false appearance or resemblance, or what he called logic of illusion. So dialectic is the analysis of the obstacles to reason, the negative connotation of dialectics. So to Kant, reason has a structural tendency to move beyond the realms of experience into the unknown, and thus commit a series of errors. And thus, human reasoning is not always perfect. We should not rely on reason all the time, because reason, based on Kant, has a structural tendency to go beyond the realm of experience and to the unknown. And that is imagination or utopianism. And thus, reasoning may lead us to a false belief as well sometimes. And thus, Kant used the notion of dialectic to prove it. Influenced from this ancient notion of dialectic, both Marx and Hegel, right, developed their own dialectical notion of dialectic to explain the evolution of human society, right? And thus, for Hegel, I put dialectical ideationalism, because he focused on the ideological basis of society to explain the evolution of human society from the past until now, right? So what kinds of evolution, right? From the ancient, from the prehistoric society until the hunting and gathering society, until the feudal society, until the pre-industrial society, until the industrial society, and the capitalist society, and modern society, right? And so the evolution of these society or system may be explained using dialectical ideationalism from Hegel, while Marx developed different notion of dialectic to explain this evolution. And this is called dialectical materialism. Why? Because Marx focused on the material basis of society. As we already learned from last semester, Marx focused on economic relation between classes, the relation of production, who control what, right? So the mean of material production controlled by who, and that says something about the ideas and all basis in society. So to Marx, he think that the economic basis or material basis of society determine what would happen in that society in terms of what the revolution that happened in the change of political system and so on. And so here Karl Marx, right? So they present two different notions of dialectic, right? And here I try to compare the dialectical ideationalism from Hegel and from Marx, dialectical materialism. And after this, we draw the implication about their basic idea about human nature, society, politics, and freedom. The idea about freedom. Okay, and so this is all a brief summary of my lecture note. So you have two lecture notes, which is a summary of the reading that I assigned, and also some extra explanation of the notion of dialectic from Marx and Hegel, right? From Marx and Hegel. And so this is, yeah, this is all that you have from the Google Classroom, right? And but I do recommend that you read all the three material, the three reading that I assigned. And if you need more reading during this lockdown time, you feel bored, you don't have anything to do at home, so you need more reading, you may email me, right? And I will share more reading with you. and you don't have to worry about the reading material right here. Okay, so now let me open up to your question or to your problem. Any problem with the reading so far? And how much have you done with your reading of this part? All the three reading or just one or two? And what problem you have? Yeah, please. Okay, so who wrote in the chat room here? Which mean, right? Which mean say late. Okay, which mean here. Yeah, so any problem so far? And also Retiri also late as well, right? Retiri, yeah, I got it. Okay, I got it. So now it's lockdown time, right? And all of us are expected to stay indoor, right? And we are not expected to expose ourselves outside. And it is banned, right? From going across the our neighborhood, for example. And in my area, it has been closed as well. It has been banned as well from going outside. And here the area has been closed. And if we want to go outside, then outside the area, then we have to have some kind of permission letter or something like that, and it's quite complicated now, right? And so this is a kind of very stressful time for us. But here, in order to reduce down the stress, then you may spend time to read, right? Read more and learn more, and that also quite good, right? And here I will upload the assignment guideline soon on your Google Classroom and tell you what to do and how many group we will need for our compilation project. Okay, and the deadline for that too. And that's we will work on that again. Okay, so anything? Yeah, please. Or anyone to share? Anyone want to share something about today's news? The situation in your area as well, right? You want? Yeah, please. So we have 40 people and yeah, 40 people online. Yeah. So in here we only have on the list we have only 39, right? 39. So more than on the list. Okay. All right. So two are late. Oh, okay. 19 today. Not. So we will meet again on the 3rd of May. Right? 2 more weeks to go. So next week is another public holiday again, and so here, and so you may have more time on that. Yeah, so Rada Wins raised the question about hegemonic stability theory, right? Built from neo-Gramscian. Yeah, actually, the concept of hegemony originate from from Antonio Gramsci, right? The writing of Antonio Gramsci, and it was him who coined the word hegemony, world hegemony, and explained how a great power maintain their grips to power and controls the world, right? And that's some kind of something, right? Hegemony. And so the neo-Gramscian later scholars who were influenced by Antonio Gramsci or neo-Gramscian scholar or thinker, try to revise and use these concept of hegemony to explain that, right? That kind of how great power maintain their grips to their status as the one who dominates the world and so on, right? And so here, I think Darwin's question, right, has something to do with that. These yeah. This question, more idea to this question will be from the third reading, right? The third reading, as you can see, the third reading about the neo-Gramscian perspective of world politics and international relation, right? The neo-Gramscian perspective in IR in general, world politics, world order, and historical change, right? And so here, this is a kind of critical theory roots to hegemony, to world order, and historical change, right? So in here, this article is written by Andrea Biller and Adam David Morton, right? And so they try to develop a theoretical perspective on this idea, on this concept of hegemony, world order, and historical change, right? So here they say, situated within a historical materialist problematic of social transformation that deploys many of the insights of the Italian Marxist Antonio Gramsci. You see, so they make it clear that they apply the framework developed by Italian Marxist Antonio Gramsci. That is why they are called neo-Gramscian scholar, neo-Gramscian perspective, because they apply the inside the perspective and framework from Marxist, Italian Marxist Antonio Gramsci. So here a crucial break emerged in the 1980s in the work of Robert Koch. Right? Robert Koch is one of the famous and influential neo-Gramscian thinker who was greatly influenced by Antonio Gramsci writings. Right? So in the work of Robert Koch, from mainstream international relation approaches to hegemony. So this article provides a comprehensive state of the discipline overview of this critical theory route to hegemony, world order, and historical change. So the article does so by outlining the historical context within which various diverse but related neo-Gramscian perspective emerge. You see, so after Antonio Gramsci's death, various neo-Gramscian thinkers try to develop by using his ideas framework in order to develop various neo-Gramscian perspective and theoretical perspective in here. So attention subsequently turns to highlight how the condition of capitalist economic crisis and structural change in the 1970s have been conceptualized, which inform contemporary debates about globalization. Significantly, the discussion is also responsive to the various controversy and criticism that surround the neo-Gramscian perspective, while, in conclusion, direction along which future research might proceed are elaborated. Providing a thorough survey of the historical materialist critical theory of hegemony and thus forms of social power through which conditions of capitalism are reproduced, mediated, and contested. And so these articles try to show the critical theory route to hegemony, world order, and historical change by applying the framework and perspective from Antonio Gramsci, right? And thus in the article you will be reading about the various diverse but related neo-Gramscian perspective that emerged, especially from the 1980s, right? And this emergence of neo-Gramscian perspective, or we can say neo-Marxist in general, reflect the tendency and the idea that Marxism is not really dead, right? So from Marxism to Antonio Gramsci, from Marx to Antonio Gramsci, from Antonio Gramsci to Robert Cox, and to many other neo-Marxist thinkers, and that they try to, actually in overall we can say that they try to revive traditional Marxism or traditional Marxist writing. They try to come up with new theoretical perspective that prove that Marxism is so robust, so kind of diverse and comprehensive and analytical, and still maintain its continuing relevance of world politics and international relations. And so in the end, right? So here we can say like this, and thus in the article you will be reading all of this, right? For yeah, who is that? For the win question, right? The win question, yeah. So is it right, the win? Yeah, yeah. And so have you finished the third article here? That article is a journal article from SAIC publication, and I think even if it was published in 2011, but I think the article has some important and relevant to our topic matter here. Okay, that is why I select this article for your reading, and hope to give you some extra idea about this. But actually, I have 3 more articles, right? But I decided to select this article because quite relevant and close to our topic. And if you want more article, then you may email me and I will share with you, right, later on. Okay, so I think many of you may not have finished the reading yet, right? So please try to read the article that I assigned, and also try to go through my lecture note as well. And if you happen to have any other question later on, yeah, you may raise them on different channel, on other channel as well, like Facebook group and email and so on. Okay, you may reach me at any time by any means. And because this is online, this is the beauty of online class, even if we lack some interaction in the physical class, but at least we have more time to do something, right, on this. Okay. Okay, so I think it's time for our break, and next week we are not going to have class, and then we will meet again on the 3rd of March or the 3rd of May, right? The 3rd of May, and by that week I will upload the reading material for the next chapter or the next part, right? Part 4 or chapter 4, maybe 1 week before our class. But from today until the 3rd of May, we are working on that chapter, on this chapter, right? Marxism and neo-Marxism, right? And so I hope you will continue your reading of this and do some more research if you are curious enough to gain deeper understanding of Marxism and neo-Marxism, right? Okay, so thank you then for joining today, right? And you may have the rest of the time for your self-study, right? And see you in the next 2 weeks, right? And let's stay safe all together, right? And let's conform to the lockdown policy by the authority and the government, right? to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus in our country. And now the pandemic is quite serious now, right? And the spread of the virus is quite critical now in our town, right? And today 624, and I don't know what tomorrow what the number would be, but we expect the number to rise because now the spread of the virus among garment workers is kind of worrying, like for us. Right? I don't know when the lockdown will be put off, but for sure I think the lockdown will continue not before long. Okay. Okay, so thank you and see you next time, right? Then, if see you next time, and please try to read as much as possible. And if you have any question, please reach me by any means, right? Later on, right? So for now, goodbye and see you next time. Good luck.
Thank you, like.